Helldivers 2 purchase restrictions were updated to add the Baltics. Furthermore, Ghost of Tsushima now has the same purchase restrictions. You can no longer buy Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut in any of these territories where you cannot sign up for a PSN account. It was known that you would not be able to play the multiplayer without a PSN account, but we all still thought that you'd be able to buy it and just play the single player stuff. I don't think anybody knew that this was the case, that they were delisting it from all of the, that's very surprising. It might be a Steam policy, frankly, where if it's like, no, if they can't access the full game because they can't make a online account to play the multiplayer component, you can't sell it on our platform to these people because they'll only be able to buy half the game, but at the same price everybody else is paying. Maybe that's what it is. It's a Steam policy to protect consumers so they don't buy half a product thinking they're getting the full thing. I don't know. But either way, this does feel like it is, at the very least, it was extremely misleading when Sony was like, oh no, you'll be able to play I think it was Sucker Punch actually. But when they said that you'll be able to play the single player, just not the multiplayer without making an account. They didn't say that they would just not be purchasable in any of those territories. Now, some people are like, this guy, Sony, single-handedly butchering their sales profit. Realistically, and this is why Sony, I'm sure, can get away with it in terms of revenues. Like we said earlier, how many people in the Holy See, the Vatican City state, how many people there are buying Ghost of Tsushima? Probably not many. In Guinea, in Ghana, in Afghanistan, in Botswana, in the Solomon Islands, in Samoa, like Philippines is bigger, but like in these groups, in the grand scheme of Sony's international business, it probably is not statistically that big of a hit, which is why they can think to themselves, it's not that big of a deal, so we'll just delist it there, whatever. But there's still a lot of people out there that would love to play these games that now just can't. I mean, the point is the number's not zero within these groups. It will be now if they can't buy it, but the number of players in these areas that would like to play this is not zero. There's certainly people out there around the world that would like to be able to play it and now can't because Sony has this arbitrary rule for a PSN account. It seems so stupid to me that they're doubling down so much on this, because all the bad PR, all of the rage about it, like at the end of the day, it's like I've said before, perception is reality, and that's what you have to deal with. They're basically trying to force players into making PSN accounts so that they can boost PSN account signups and numbers and take that to investors and be like, look, see, our online platform is growing. We have more players than ever, and they can use that to send out email notifications and advertising stuff. I'm sure there's a kickback on the back end for it, but I don't think they're making more money from it on this with this drama. I think this drama is not worth it at all. Like it just doesn't make any sense why they would be doubling down on it. And I'm sure like behind closed doors, they're saying, yeah, so people in Gambia can't buy our Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut. And they're like, yeah, it's not that big of a deal, whatever. I'm sure that's what they're saying behind closed doors. But when you're delisting it from all of these countries to get some email addresses, because they could just totally turn it off. Nope. When you're playing on PC, you use Steam's platform to do co-op and multiplayer stuff. You don't need to use the PlayStation Network. You can turn off cross-platform play, keep it all segmented and separate. Do that, which honestly you probably should be doing for cheaters a lot of the time anyways. It just doesn't make any sense, especially because the multiplayer component of Ghost of Tsushima is like, it was a little add-on thing they did after the game launched. It wasn't even like a main feature of the game. And they're delisting it from 170 plus countries and territories for some email addresses for that little side mode. Katie Cat, Japan's on the list because Japan has a bunch of localization stuff they have to do. So for Helldivers, for example, Helldivers 2 also has Japan on this list, but they have a separate version of the game on their platform in that country. So it's like a different listing. So it's available there. It's just this version isn't available there. And that might be true for some of these countries. Maybe in Antarctica, they have a special version that's available there that isn't available elsewhere. Who knows? Maybe they do with some of these countries, but generally, I think most of these just won't be able to access the game or purchase it. So, I mean, all told, I just genuinely don't understand why this is so crucial to them, why they're willing to go through all of this crap, all the drama for it, when it's just it's for some stupid email addresses. Really? Like, I would understand if they wanted to die on this hill for like, maybe it's for like a PlayStation launcher where they're like, yeah, we're going to make 30%. We're not going to have to pay 30% to Steam. So we're going to make like 50% higher revenues. So yeah, we'll get some blowback by forcing you to buy it on our launcher, but it'll be worth it in the end. Maybe that's like, that would be a hill to die on because there's so much money on the table. But in this case, it's like, what are you fighting for? You're fighting for email addresses, and probably not that many. Like, their own logic is that this can be delisted here because there's not that many gamers out there that are going to be like buying the game in these territories. So it's not that big of a hit. It's like, okay, so then why are the email addresses that crucial? Like, what are we doing? What are we doing with all this? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Can you VPN it then? Yeah. So there was somebody that went to the PlayStation like customer service portal, and they were chatting with a support person, and they said you can always set your country to one that is on the approved list, make a PSN account, and then play Helldivers 2 that way before it was walked back and everything, which breaks Sony's own terms of service. So if you follow the advice of their own customer service agent, you could have your account banned and shut down. And when that happens, because you broke TOS, they're allowed to shut down your account. You lose all of your digital purchases. You lose all of your accounts. You lose all of your save files. Everything goes away. They got fired. I mean, honestly, they probably should be if they were telling people to break their own company's terms of service. Can't be that competent. But but that's, it just represents a broader unpreparedness for this drama that was easily foreseeable. Like, just the simple question of, well, what happens to all of the people that live in countries where they can't make a PSN account? They had no answer for days and days and days until like eventually it was just unlisted, and it seemed like, oh yeah, if you bought Helldivers in any of these countries, yeah, you'll just lose access to it. Sorry. They apparently just hadn't considered it or thought about it. It was ridiculous. It was stunning. I just genuinely don't know why this is worth it. Sony continues to gatekeep its games. Before they did so with exclusivity, now with regional restrictions. It's almost as if they want their games to get pirated day one in over 170 countries. It is kind of like that. And like, again, like I've said since this news initially broke, like as somebody that lives in Colorado in the US, that has a PlayStation and a PSN account, for me, this is not a big deal. Like if I saw the pop-up and it was like, oh, just connect your PlayStation account, I would just log into it, which is what I did when Helldivers 2 launched, because at launch, they required those logins, which I connected my account to it. And then later, like a day later or something, they removed that requirement because it was causing server queue issues and all sorts of stuff. But for me, it wasn't that big of a deal. I just logged in and then moved on with my day. But again, perception is reality. The perception for the broader market is that they just don't want these gates put in place. And it seems ridiculous to unlist a single player game, a vast majority single player game, to unlist it in 170 countries because they can't sign up for a PSN account for the multiplayer mode. That's just stupid. It's just ridiculous. And what could Sony possibly get by requiring that account in Ghost of Tsushima? Why wouldn't they lift the requirement for this game specifically? If it's so crucial for security and stuff, wrong button. If it was so crucial for security and stuff, you would think that they would require it for Helldivers as well. But no, they've lifted that requirement with Helldivers, supposedly. So just no part of it makes any sense. It seems like they're dying on a hill for no reason at all. And it's just a waste of time and money, and people are going to get pissed about it. And we'll see. I mean, I when I tried the game, I'm going to boot it up and see if they immediately prompt me for the PSN account. If they ask me only when I try to boot into the multiplayer mode, we'll see. But it's weird. Must be a huge investor in it for personal data or something. Yeah. My guess is like this just reeks of like executive that wants that number to go up and doesn't look at the Steam performance, isn't that interested in it, but it's like the executive leader of online services or something, and he's just looking at it like, yep, no, just make that number go up so it requires signups on the game, whatever. And then if there's a country where they can't do it, just delist it there. It's probably a small country anyways, and then they just move on with their day and they don't think about it. And like that to me is what it seems like, because nobody that's like in the trenches would go through with this. Like, and what this really sucks for are the people that are working their butts off on these ports, on these games. They're doing nothing wrong. This is a Sony decision that they're just making totally out of touch. And I think the broader sentiment is, again, you can't treat PC gamers the same way you get away with treating console gamers. Okay, console gamers have a certain tolerance for being kind of pushed around and forced to do things, because that's just what you get when you're on somebody else's platform. PC is kind of like the Wild West. People expect a certain amount of freedom and flexibility, and if they don't want to give you their email address to play a game that they've already bought, they shouldn't have to give you their email address, because they've already bought the game. That's just where gamers are at. One thing that PC gamers are really good at is that they tend to, circle the wagons, and once they've decided to die on this hill, they will fight tooth and nail. They will mass downvote your game, and they'll make their voices heard, which is what happened with Helldivers. And it seems like with Ghost of Tsushima on PC, they're going to try the same thing over again. They're going to try to introduce it there. And I would not be surprised if when they bring God of War Ragnarok, which reportedly they're expecting to announce for PC later this month, I wouldn't be surprised, even though Ragnarok has no online component, I wouldn't be surprised if they require it there. And they'll just keep trying until people get tired and ignore it and just move on and give up. I think they're just going to keep trying. Because I think, personally, my gut's telling me, I think they're working up to doing their own launcher. Especially if Sony is preparing like all of this crap with their own overlay and all this stuff, and they're planning to bring a bunch more games to PC. It only makes sense that if they're this obsessed with dying on stupid hills, it makes sense that they're going to put out their own launcher and maybe even eventually stop selling games on Steam and stuff like that. That would be my guess. Which again, to be clear, I think is a stupid decision. I think that's a great way. Like, you thought the Helldivers 2 drama was bad? Just wait until they announce that, yeah, we're bringing The Last of Us Part 2 to PC, but yeah, it's only on the Sony PlayStation launcher, which every launcher that's new sucks ass, and it's going to be awful, and it's going to be super slow and sluggish, crash constantly. There's going to be so much crap with it. Just wait. But you better believe they're going to try to do that. Because straight up, it's like the amount of money that is made comparatively is like a 50% increase. Because sorry to do the like high school explanation, but somebody was confused about this in the comments on the one of the previous stream clips. But like, if you have a column and you imagine it split into thirds, okay, roughly 33% each chunk. This block is how much is being made right now on Steam. Okay, so the black is how much money is actually being made on Steam. The red is Steam's cut. So Sony is looking at that and they're like, ooh, well, if we were to go over here, do our own launcher, we would get to keep this block of money and all of this too. So we would get an extra chunk, which is 50% of our current revenues, and we would just get to add that right up on top. So it would increase our revenues by 50% because we would save 33% roughly. It's actually about 30% by not giving that up to Steam. So just by going to their own launcher, they gain this extra chunk, which is a 50% increase. Yeah, yep, but only that the left one will be smaller overall. But even then, even if you lose a quarter of all your sales and this overall column shrinks by 25%, like let's say it shrinks by like 25%, it's still higher than this one was. So even if you lose some people, you're still making more money. So they can eat a little bit of a blowback. They can eat some losses from gamers that are pissed off. And you're right, now you have to run your own launcher. You're exactly right. And there's costs associated with that, which I think like Bethesda maybe didn't consider when they launched Bethesda Net, because it seems like launchers are actually surprisingly expensive to maintain when you factor in like, okay, well, crap, we now have to pay for servers globally to let people download games. We have to have pretty fast servers rented and paid for, because these are massive 100 gig games that people need to download quickly. So that's going to be really expensive. Then we have to have an engineering staff. We have to have security teams that are making sure that user data isn't breaking out and getting stolen. Like, it is not cheap or easy to run a launcher, but a lot of companies seem to think it is. And they only learn that lesson the hard way by launching a crappy launcher that sucks ass and takes 5, 6, 7 years to actually get working. The EA launcher still doesn't work. Neither does the Rockstar launcher. It also still sucks ass. And it's been out for what, like a decade? How on earth is Sony going to figure it out on the first go round? Like, they're not, but I'd bet money they're going to try, because for them, this is too alluring. Especially right now, their margins are really low. Like, just remind you, like they said right now their margins are at about 6%. And granted, that's company wide for the gaming division, but imagine like out of this big chunk of green, the actual profit they're making is like this much. So for them to get this extra chunk might take that to like this much. It could literally double profits because it would increase margins. Like that's what we're talking about. Moving the needle a little bit over here can have cascading massive effects on things like profit down the balance sheet. And so I think, you know, this is all like undergrad business stuff. It's not complicated. It's really straightforward. And the guys that are running Sony are like, you know, PhDs in this stuff. They know what they're doing, and they know how to move the equations and variables to make it work. And I would bet, especially because they're showing that they're out of touch with gamers, specifically on PC. And if they're out of touch with gamers on PC, there is no reason not to do it. The only reason you wouldn't try to do your own launcher is because you know the blowback from PC gamers will be so bad that you'll lose probably a lot more than 25% of your sales, honestly. You'll lose a lot, and it'll be a nightmare. You'll have to hire more customer service reps. You'll get, it's going to be bad. Mass downvoting, all sorts of stuff. So for them, if they're already showing they're out of touch with the gamers, there is nothing stopping them from trying it. He took my thing.